Hi guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the dying breed of smaller guards. So we're going to be looking at like certain players. We're going to be like looking more specifically into players like Chris Paul, Fred VanVleet, and Mike Conley. Although we're going to mention a lot of other players as well throughout the video. So like, what is a smaller guard? I usually consider a small guard to be like 6'1" and under. I think sometimes we see guards who are 6'2" be okay, but still have their fair share of struggles. But I just went with 6'1" and under in this case. But like, why are they dying and fizzing out of the league? And I think that's because of some of the internal struggles they have with their height and stuff like that. So I started looking at what makes a smaller guard good. So like, what is something like the players that I listed have in common? And I think one of them definitely is IQ. I think the IQ is a huge part in the success behind Chris Paul, Fred VanVleet, even Mike Conley just being, relevant for the time span that, they all were and still are, I would say. But I think, they're all kind of getting up there in age. I probably wouldn't say there's, a big, longevity left for all of them. They probably have a few years of their careers, but they're all probably, on the brink of their career. I'd probably say Fred VanVleet has the longest out of all of them. I think he's still like 30, early 30s. But Chris Paul, I think's, he's probably pushing 40s. Mike Conley as well. He's, they're all starting to get up there, mid to late 30s right now. But their IQ is, I feel like something that they've kind of developed throughout the years of their career. It is, up there. But even when they were, quote-unquote younger and stuff like that, it was still exceptional. Hence why they were all in the starting rotation and still are and stuff like that. So their IQ is, what keeps them there and stuff like that. And their leadership as well. I mean, Chris Paul, we know his leadership is, great. He's been a part of so many successful teams despite, falling short so many times and stuff like that. But Fred VanVleet as well, I mean, his leadership is, I think there's a reason the Rockets have kept him and, decided to sign him, especially with such a young core and stuff like that, is because you always need that kind of savvy veteran who, is smart, knows how to run the floor and stuff like that, and as well, has that leadership to kind of coach up, some of your younger players. And when you look at the rosters that, each of the three players I mentioned are on, they're all relatively young. I mean, Chris Paul, Wemby, Castle, you added Fox, you still have Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell. I mean, you go to like a younger team who's, talented but still needs a little bit. Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, Cam Whitmore, Jabari Smith, Alperen Sengun, Amen Thompson. There's so many. I mean, the Rockets we know are just filled with young talent. Even Mike Conley, I know you can probably say the Timberwolves are starting to get a little, older, but he's been there for quite some time. I would say younger Anthony Edwards, stuff like that. I mean, Cat was still, he was still fairly new, I would say, and stuff like that. So there's going to be a certain leadership that they carry with themselves throughout their careers, just because if you're going to be smaller guard, you kind of you need to know how to lead, I would say. And whether that be on or off the court, I think you need a mix of both and stuff like that. But the things that kind of makes these smaller guards starting to fall out of the league is their defense. They're going to be naturally not as good as defense. I mean, you can be skilled, but you're going to struggle. If you're 6 foot, you're going to struggle guarding a center, which kind of leads to the fact that you're going to see this low versatility between all of them. They're not going to go out there, create a high contested shot. If Kevin Durant pulls up in your face and you're a 6 foot guard, you could jump as much as you want. There's still going to be you're not going to really contest him. He's going to have a free will. He's going to be able to, go at you whichever way you want. And stuff like that. And it also kind of leads to the switchable defense. We're seeing the league is kind of trending more to on and off ball screens. I feel like we've seen it so much. I mean, I was watching the Knicks Celtics game last night, and there were so many times I'd see Jason Tatum just get a screen, switch on to like Jalen Brunson. Brunson's still relatively shorter, doesn't fit into that, maybe 6'1", 6 foot smaller, but he's right at the threshold. I think he is listed at 6'2", but you're seeing all these switches on screens and they're kind of just having your way. I mean, these taller players who could just, go at you and play, make, and score. There's going to be a level of intricacy that kind of goes into that, because you're not going to be able to just guard them as much as you want. There's not going to be as much free will and stuff like that, so it makes it hard, on the defensive end. And I think that's kind of why teams are moving away from those types of players. I mean, not many teams, have a starting point guard who's 6'1" and under. And I mean, also, I think the hardest part with this and doing some of the research is teams do lie. I mean, we see it all the time on height. Players lie, teams lie just to go with it. You kind of just comply. I think Kevin Durant is listed at like 6'9", but I mean, he's kind of known for being one of the people who's always lied about his height throughout his career just because he didn't want to play center. I don't think he would have excelled there either. He's kind of known to be, that 3 to 4 kind of slot, small forward, wing 4 kind of guy. But we do see that more with point guards as well. I don't think it makes a big difference. If you're 5'11" and you're listed at 6 foot, I mean, you still got to know how to control the floor and stuff like that. I don't think there's a big difference. Kevin Durant's still going to shoot over you. Jason Tatum. I mean, these bigger wings who could just go out there and score like that, they'll have your way with you in a sense. And I'm not saying that, small guards are going to be bad at defense by any means, because that's not totally true. We've seen some talented defensive guards. Jose Alvarado, he's kind of known for being a better, defensive guard. Davion Mitchell as well, I think, is a good one. But, I mean, they're not going to have the same good defense as, like, OG Anunoby, Amen Thompson, Asar Thompson, where I think those, 3 can kind of... You could probably argue you can go out there and guard, 1 through 5, all positions. But, I mean, Davion Mitchell and Jose Alvarado, they're not going to go and guard your center. So even despite them being, a good defensive guard, there's still going to be an immense amount of struggle. I mean, you could just lock up, their point guard and shooting guard, and that's really about it. But, you could be great at defense, but you also have the great defender who's a small forward. They're probably going to go with the small forward. I mean, you could be more complete in a sense. And, all right, so say there's 2 guards who are 6'7", or I'll say 6'6" and 6 foot, and they're both the same skill set and whatnot. I think, teams, no brainer kind of wise, just go and take the taller one. And I think that is, kind of rough, but at the same time, I don't know if I could blame them. I mean, I think the league is kind of trending to taller players. I mean, we see Wemby come in at 7'4". I mean, Luka's like 6'7" and plays point guard. Magic Johnson, I think, was listed, at 6'9" and played point guard. I mean, so there is always exceptions. There's always going to be smaller guards in the league and stuff like that. But at the same time, if you're Davion Mitchell, you're not really going to go out there and guard Luka like that. You could definitely, put a lot of effort into there, but there's a certain level. Like, would you rather have Amen Thompson guarding him or Davion Mitchell? I mean, I think it's just kind of comparable stuff like that makes it pretty intricate for these smaller guards. Hence why teams are passing on them in the draft. I mean, Igor Demon coming out of the draft, I think, is listed at 6'9". We'll see what the Combine says when he officially measures. But, I mean, we're always going to be taller guards. It's always going to be smaller guards. But I think the smaller guard type of role is kind of dying in a sense. I mean, looking towards some other players, I'm going to name a few more names. Jose Alvarado, Trae Young, I think, is kind of that younger exception. Because I feel like the 3 that I listed in Fred VanVleet, Mike Conley, and Chris Paul, they're all getting up there in age. I think Trae Young is still relatively young in terms of his career. But then you also like Kyle Lowry. I mean, went from like a starter to, bench player over there in Philly. And I think it does kind of suck. I mean, seeing their careers kind of die down in a sense. But I would say like the last young guard who's really talented may be Trae Young. And then even in like the G League and some of the people who are fighting for roster spots, I mean, I think they're struggling a lot more to like see an NBA roster because they're not as talented. Yuki Kamura from the Grizzlies, Marcus Noel, I think, is on the Raptors. Aaron Holiday from the Rockets. I mean, when you have, talent around them, And, I'm not saying they're bad players at all, because that's not the case. But when you look at their skill set and their height, and I think it makes it tricky for them to really stay and stand on a roster. Hence why, they're fighting for G League, maybe that two-way type of contract and stuff like that. So, I think it is tough seeing these types of guards, try and fight for their careers. Because, you can't really do anything about your height. Hence why, players do lie about their height, because I don't blame them. You don't want teams to really pass up on you and stuff like that just because of your intangibles. But I think when you look toward the draft, there is times players do get selected just because of their intangibles. I think teams look more toward the 6'6", more versatile kind of guard who is maybe not as complete as the smaller guard. But, when you look at the intangibles of, like, speed, height, you really can't control that. It's kind of just natural. Maybe you can get a little bit taller, maybe you can be a little bit faster. But it's not going to be anything tremendous to where teams are going to be like, oh, yeah, let's pick him and hope that he grows into these things. When you have someone who's crazy fast, crazy tall, and can kind of, build on his game and not build on his height and speed. So stuff like that makes it, I think, a little tricky for these players. I'm always rooting for the smaller guards. I do like the careers of Chris Paul, Fred VanVleet, Trae Young. I like Jose Alvarado. Yuki Kamura is an interesting one as well with the Grizzlies. I think he's a solid player. I think he's listed at 5'8", which is like the average height for a person. So the fact that he's even made it this far is tremendous. But will he have a Hall of Fame career? I don't think so by any means, which makes it tricky. At what point do you really think he's going to push on to that, starting roster spot? Maybe, I don't think he'll ever start, unless it's like the end of the year and you're clinched a certain spot in the playoffs. But, if games, starting of the game in the beginning of the season, I don't think you ever see him start. So, I'm rooting for these smaller guards who are coming into the league or maybe already in the G League and stuff like that. Push on to just an NBA roster. But I do think it is a dying breed in terms of where their careers, and I'm not saying all of them, the individual careers, I'm saying like the careers of all the smaller guards. I think they're going to start fizzing out of the league. So yeah, I think that's just my take on it. Let me know what you guys think down below. I'd love some feedback on what you guys think of these smaller guards types of roles. Feel free to comment. I'd love to read them. And yeah, guys, I'll catch you in the next one.